Hi, welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and we'd like to thank Backscatter Underwater Photo and Video for sponsoring this episode. And Backscatter have a huge range of underwater photography and video equipment available. They do mail order. Check them out on backscatter.com. I'm joined today by our regular contributor, Alex Mustard. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Adam. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Obviously, we're going through the lockdown, as most people are, I think, on the planet. And I thought I might ask Alex how he plans to be a better photographer after lockdown than he was when he went in. So, what are you up to, Alex?
Well, it's a really good question. And I think that because, the likes of you and I, we're often teaching others and sharing our knowledge about photography. I think a key thing that people maybe often miss is that we are also both always trying to improve as photographers and doing various things. And I think it's that continual education is really important. If you look at, top sports people, for example, golfers, tennis players, they all have coaches that even though they know their sport inside out, they look to areas that they can improve on. And I think that's a very good attitude to take as an underwater photographer. Even if you know your stuff, I think you can always benefit from getting, ideas, Absolutely. Inspiration, making sure your mind is really on top of things. And it's particularly that area of idea generation that really interests me. And I think that's always an area where you can come out firing and ready to go. And actually, you and I last night, we both tuned in for a presentation on the photography experts platform with a sort of a deep thinking nature photographer from land photography called Chris Gomersall. He's a British photographer, mainly specializes in bird photography. And he was giving a presentation there last night about generating original ideas, how you drive your image making forwards. And that was very much something based around the idea of wanting to be a better photographer.
I think in many ways, we often become quite focused about ideas like the concrete nuts and bolts of taking pictures. And really, when we don't have the opportunity to do it as much, possibly this gives us the opportunity to now go out and actually look for different ideas, to try and expand our creativity by looking at the way other people are taking pictures, and people are taking pictures in other genres apart from the underwater one. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so, no, I mean, this is, for those that don't know Chris Gomersall, this is his book. It's green. The title's green screening on me. You can see. But it's called The Wildlife Photographer, and the presentations that he's doing at the moment are kind of building on that thesis. And it's a very interesting book because it's not really about the nuts and bolts of shooting. It's very much about developing your vision, developing your way of creating unique pictures which will really satisfy you. And I think even though you and I currently can't go out and take photos, we can definitely work on our thinking as photographers in this period. And I think that's really valuable. One of the points that Chris made last night in the presentation we were watching is, he asked the question, do you want to be an original artist or do you want to be a tribute act? And it was a great way of encouraging people to want to push those boundaries forward. But at the same time, I think he was making the point that even his pictures that have been lauded as being very creative, very original, they draw inspiration from others' work. It's not that you come up with an idea, you get a blank canvas, and suddenly, you've got something totally new. It's all about what you're absorbing, from other areas.
And he was tying it a lot into art as well, beyond the photographic art, but painting, and he was also talking about things like looking in areas like dance and all the performing arts basically for inspiration. And that's I think as underwater photographers we tend to get very focused on being underwater and taking pictures, and there's a whole variety of inspiration out there we can seek from outside. And I think to be original as a photographer, the more you can try and incorporate those elements, the more original you're going to be. Taking pictures of fish, if all you ever do is take pictures of fish, that's fine, but at the end of the day it's still just going to be pictures of fish. Whereas if you see fish as a dance sequence, for example, and try and capture the schooling fish as a dance sequence, that's putting a whole different spin on the way you're viewing that particular event, and has potential to be very creative.
Yeah, and I think it's a case of you may as an individual photographer only photograph one type of subject like that, but I think the mistake is then to only absorb that as a media as inspiration. You know, if you are a fish photographer and you only follow on Instagram other fish photographers, you're going to lack that inspiration. Whereas if you get out there and absorb all these influences, you're much more likely to have those sparks of creativity, which are not usually, you know, as Chris was making the point, they're not usually giant leaps.
No.
It's, you know, you expose yourself to this media and then you make small steps, or you take ideas from another genre and apply them in your own genre. And that's usually where the original and creative work goes. And there was a quote he said at the end, which I'm going to misremember now, which I think he said was maybe from Tom York, the singer of Radiohead.
Yeah.
And it was something along the lines of, I don't want to be light years ahead of everyone. I want to be, you know, to just beat them by a month or so. You know, you don't need to be, you know, recreated. You just need to be first to try something in your area.
Yeah. I think the other thing that is really, that came to me from that talk is, you know, the subconscious. We subconsciously absorb ideas on a level that I don't actually think we really understand. So by exposing yourself to different genres, to different mediums, to different types of imagery, and that actually has almost a subconscious effect. And it's not even something, you know, I think sometimes we try with creativity, we try too hard to put it in a box and give it rules and give it labels. And in actual fact, I think, you know, if you go out there and look at different pictures, look at things that challenge, try and think, oh, I like it, I don't like it, you'll be amazed at how much that sort of information implants itself in your brain. I think it's probably is subconsciously, and that's a, you know, it's not a very concrete process. You can't go out and learn it specifically, but it's something that happens. And by looking at imagery, this is what you get, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's also, you know, keeping your mind open to all these different sources. And a really good example of that, actually, I heard this morning while walking the dog. I was just walking Zena, emptying the dog outside, doing my plastic bag duty. Anyway, when I was walking the dog, I was listening to a podcast created by a Scottish photographer called View Space Finders, and it's a series of very friendly interviews with different photographers and he purposely goes out and finds photographers from as wide a genres as possible. And the one that came up today on my phone is with the American photographer Howard Schatz, who's famous for his swimming pool work. For those who aren't familiar with I grabbed his book as well, having listened to that, to show this one doesn't green screen, so I can keep it up for longer. And I'd never actually heard or read an interview with Howard Schatz before and talking about his photography. And I think that, you know, he's a photographer who I'm incredibly impressed by his creativity, because he works with such simple ingredients. It's kind of like if I go to the kitchen cupboard and there's just a couple of things in there, I end up with a rubbish dinner. You take a great chef to that same kitchen cupboard and they make amazing food out of those things. And Howard Schatz is kind of the great chef of, you can just give him a swimming pool, a person and some light, and he'll create, you know, thousands of different images. And I think a photographer in that vein is a great inspiration for someone who's, you know, because he's working with such simple stuff. You know, we go underwater and there's a different fish every dive and there's different backgrounds, and he's basically got the same setup again and again, and through his ideas and creativity. And he was talking about how valuable for him his general life experiences, the visual intake that he has through the day, you know, just living his life is really where most of his inspiration comes from. But he was very keen to make the point that, you know, each time he gets a spark of inspiration, he'll make the effort to really follow that, to explore it. He used the word exploration. You know, he gets that spark and then he explores it. And often it ends in failure. And I think that's a really important part. It's not there, you know, you can, you know, you need to be able to try these things, experiment with these things without that feeling that it's got to give instant success. And sometimes it fails and he realizes it's not going anywhere. Other times that spark of inspiration might yield a portfolio of hundreds of images because it takes him down a particular route. But he gives himself that permission to explore themes, explore ideas, and to fail. And I think, you know, so he opens himself up to all this inspiration and then heads off and experiments with things, explores them without being too focused on the end goal. And then as the results start to come, you know, realizes what's not working, realizes what is working, and follow those things. And I think that's a great philosophy to take into our type of photography as well.
I think you also need to be aware that it's always subjective. So what works for you may well not work for someone else. And you need to make a very honest appraisal. And Chris spoke about it last night about, who's your audience? What are you doing? Are you taking pictures for you? Or are you taking pictures for a magazine? Or are you taking pictures for for put online on social media, and really try and figure out exactly where you want the message that you're trying to create with the image to resonate. And I'm sure that when you've got a portfolio of lots of images, you then need to be very, very self-critical really as to what you do with them. And I think that's a really, I think sometimes, particularly with social media, perhaps we tend to get a random stream of consciousness, and that tends to dilute the really good stuff. You need to really think, well, that image works there, that image works there, and be subjective about where you share them. Sure.
Yeah. So for me, it really is. It's but I have to say the overriding thing is whether you agree with all these points or find an affinity with them that you think fits with your own photography. I've tried throughout lockdown to tune into as many interviews, discussions, presentations by photographers who I think their work is really interesting. And I'm not really very interested in tuning into presentations by photographers who are going like, I went to the Barrier Reef and I saw this shark and I took this photo. I want to hear people talking about the thought process, and to some extent sometimes the mechanics. I'm not particularly interested in just and here's another thing and here's another thing. I like these photographers who attempt to analyze their work and think more deeply about it, because I think it can really spark things in yourself. And I've always said in underwater photography, the time to do that thinking is not when you're underwater, but actually when you've got lots of time out of the water. And lockdown is great for that. So that's where I'm really hoping to come back a better photographer.
And possibly a byproduct of lockdown is that a lot of people are now, this information is arguably much more accessible than it ever has been. So
yeah, that's really true. Yeah.
So I think Alex, obviously you mentioned it's photo experts, isn't it? Not photography experts.
No, it's photography experts.
Sorry.
Big long, yeah. And they're an online platform that presents lots of these types of presentations. Yep. You can rent old presentations as well, so you can watch them.
Yep.
I really like the live sessions because you can actually ask questions. Yep. Last night I got a bit press ganged into asking a question. But it's it's fun, it's interactive if you want it to be. It's nice that the recordings are up there. And I have to say that there are specific ones on that platform that I have definitely found a benefit to my photography.
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah, I've got on there and listened to quite a few things. I think they're very good.
And there are other places as well. I'm not, that's one I happen to work with. It's not, yeah.
So very prosaically, because it's time. I'm giving a presentation at the Philippines International Dive Exhibition, which is a virtual exhibition Saturday morning. I think it's at. Have a look on fidex.com. There's lots of presentations on there. Mine is entitled Five Ways to Create Better Underwater Photography, and it's going to be a nuts and bolts rather than creative, I'm afraid. Yeah. So
and I guess that'll be watch backable as well.
Yes, I'm not sure. I'm sure it will be shareable. Yeah, I'm sure it will. Yeah. So thank you very much, Alex. Obviously, Alex has been posting. Actually, I've seen some stuff going up on social media.
No. He's back at school now. I can post. I've got time to post on social media.
So we can now talk about his social media channels.
Pictures on.
So Alex on Instagram is.
Oh gosh, I think Alex Mustard 1, all one word. I think.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah. So have a look, Alex Mustard 1. Obviously, to start engaging your creative brains or creative juices. There we are. That's the phrase I was looking for. So thank you very much, Alex. Thanks very much again to Backscatter, Underwater Photo and Video for sponsoring this episode. Our sponsors make these episodes possible, so please try and support them too. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and please feel free to add comments about any possible channels that you use to expand your creativity and to give you insight into the photographic process or the image capturing process. Please drop us a like if you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.